Well, we're now on to part three of correcting Kent's lies about his tax case. Let's start again.
I don't know if he was on the take or not. Alan Ritchie from Washington State. We paid him a bunch of money and did not do his job. He could have stopped this case 100 times. Okay. If you did not apply for the IRS for their permission to be a withholding agent, and therefore had no authority to do so, our ministry would not have had authority to withhold had we wanted to. You have to apply for authority to be a withholding agent. Furthermore,
yes, but you should have, because you're employing people, Kent. I mean, that's a very weak argument.
Withholding is mandatory only on foreigners per 26 USC 1441. And you didn't have any foreigners working there.
No, that's not the case.
So there was no law broken. The first 12 counts are
It doesn't just apply to foreigners.
Completely bogus. I did not break any law. Next 45 counts is so-called structuring, which per the unoverturned rulings of the federal appeals case in Renus, there is no such thing as structuring, because the so-called mandatory reporting form was never properly promulgated by the IRS in the early 70s, conformant to another congressional act called the Paperwork Reduction Act. There never was a law against structuring. Never was. The Bank Secrecy Act, let's see, banking activity form is voluntary and not mandatory. Plus, I can't tell the bank to fill out a form or not fill out a form. I can't determine what they do.
Well, nobody's saying that you do. It's you did those things that the bank would have been obliged to report. Had you gone over the 10,000, you didn't, so the bank wasn't obliged to report it. But what it fell into then was the crime of structuring, which of course you've denied, and structuring is doing exactly what you did to avoid the bank having to report your cash dealings, Kent. I mean, you're not very good with donations anyway. You seem to have your staff stealing some of it at some stage. You're talking about that every show at the moment, about one of your tech guys having got down on all your donations and things, so don't come on here crying about this and about that. You've known what's going on all the time.
There is no criminal liability attached to withdrawing or depositing less than 10,000 in any transaction. Banks today all believe it's mandatory when in fact it's voluntary. And mass delusion is self-perpetuating still today.
Yeah, but Kent's always right on everything. Of course, it's everybody else who's wrong. Well, here's a bit of advice. You're not right.
There's one last count, interfering with an officer. This is my last charge I was charged with. According to the regulations of the statute I was charged with interfering with a tobacco inspection officer who appeared at the manufacturing plant, tobacco warehouse, tobacco shipping company, or tobacco retailer store, and I somehow blocked their way or refused to show them tobacco inventory logs. They took a tobacco law to come after me for interfering with an officer. I smoked 2 cigarettes when I was 12 and decided I'm not going to do that. But I don't sell tobacco, don't make tobacco. This is what, and some of you atheists are out there still saying I deserve to go to jail. What law did I break? Paul maintained his innocency, didn't see in front. He said, look, show me what I did. Show me my crime.
Well, you've been showed time and time again, Kent, about your crime, and you're just refusing to see it. And as for this interaction with this officer, you were threatening to him, and you could just see the way you carry on your own shows with your passive-aggressive stuff. And this is the way you would have treated him, so you deserve what you got.
They couldn't, because there wasn't one. You guys, show me my crime.
You've been shown it over and over again.
They took a tobacco law and charged me with it and convicted me. Let's see. So I supposedly blocked their way or refused to show them my tobacco inventory logs.
I think blocking their way is quite likely, Kent.
When in reality, he only asked the public on the radio to pray for him, for the agent to stop the fraud. Summary from the legal team. You did not break any laws and were fraudulently convicted.
That's your legal team, Kent, and that is their job to say that. And of course, it's the job of the jury to decide. And they decided that you were guilty, and you failed at your appeal, and And that is the end of the matter. End of the matter.
Structuring and smurfing examples. Let's say someone has 90,000 in cash. If they want to avoid reporting requirements, there are no requirements, okay? They split
Well, there are requirements, obviously.
this up into 10 transactions of 9,000. This is an example of structuring. Remember, structuring transactions in this way is illegal. Whoever wrote this article on the internet does not know the law. It is not. There's no such thing as structuring. Our ministry legal counsel advised us to keep withdrawals under 10,000 to not make them think we were doing anything illegal.
No, they advised you to keep it under that, so the banks didn't have to report. And you knew about that too, according to your own employee, and you tried it on anyway, and you got caught. So pay up, forget it. I've no doubt that if you hadn't been such an awful person about it and threw your wife under the legal bus too, that you possibly would have got a bit lesser sentence. You deserved everything you got.
Because that triggers a flag. Oh, drug dealer or something, I guess. I've never taken drugs. I've never tasted alcohol.
Well, that's nothing to do with it. And the number of women you've slept with, or whether you're a virgin on your honeymoon, is nothing to do with either. Or whether you dated 300 girls at high school, or whether your father was the last survivor of his platoon. It's all totally irrelevant.
71 in a couple of days. We had dozens of college students helping us in their off hours. We paid them cash, and they did their own reporting and paid their own taxes.
Well, that's where you're falling down again. You have to do withholding tax. You give it, and then they pay their own taxes, and you've paid them in cash. They're not going to pay tax. It's obvious, Kent.
There never was a crime. Never was.
Oh, that was the crime.
John David Roy Atchison, American Assistant U.S. Attorney in Florida's Northern District of Florida, was arrested September 16th. That was shortly after I went to prison. He's the U.S. Attorney that put me in prison.
No, he didn't put him in prison. You were put in prison because of the general prosecution, and he had a very low-level role, and I will actually tell you what it was. So, Kent, you've been lying for years about this. Atchison's involvement. The one document found shows that Atchison filed a motion in the case months after your convictions and sentencing. And you also find a motion filed shortly thereafter by another attorney advising the court the document filed by Atchison was being withdrawn as was a duplicate, something filed earlier. That was the end of his involvement in the case, and it was after you were always convicted. But even had that not been the case, his dreadful predilections have nothing to do with you being found guilty or not.
At the Detroit Metropolitan Airport, in an internet sex sting organized by the Macomb County Sheriff's Office and the FBI, he allegedly had flown to Michigan with the intent of having sex with a 5-year-old girl. He was a volunteer coach for the girls' softball and basketball teams and president of a youth sports association. John Ratchet, a U.S. attorney, gained notoriety. He was arrested for suspicion of soliciting sex from a 5-year-old. Born 1954, bachelor's degree, University of Florida, law degree from Cumberland Law School. Let's see. He worked as the U.S. Attorney's Office in Pensacola, working on tax and financial crime cases. He was married to and had 3 children with Barbara Atchison, lived in Gulf Breeze. September 16th, he was arrested at the airport. He was charged with enticement of a minor to engage in sexual activity using the internet, aggravated sexual abuse, traveling across state lines to have sex with someone under the age of 12. At the time of his arrest, he was carrying presents for his intended victim, a doll and a pair of earrings. Also in his possession was a jar of petroleum jelly. Following his arrest, he tried to kill himself via hanging with a sheet in his jail cell, September 20th. He'd been removed from the suicide watch the previous day after assuring his lawyer and a judge he would not harm himself. He was not injured in the suicide attempt, and another inmate reported it about 4 a.m. Then, a few days later, he succeeded. October 5th, he hung himself. That's the U.S. attorney came after me for bogus laws.
No, once again, he filed 1 or 2 documents in the case after you'd been found guilty. You can easily produce evidence of his involvement if you have it. If what you're saying is true, but You're not telling the truth here, Kent. You're just trying to make yourself look better. And whilst talking about people, I mean, it was just a dreadful thing that Atchison did, but it wasn't too long ago at your Dino land that you invited your good friend Chris Jones to come. And despite the concerns of the fellow volunteers there, and they didn't want him there because he'd been convicted of child sex offenses, you insisted that he come. When he did turn up, he was traveling with a boy, an 11-year-old boy, not a relative. And then, coincidentally, they ended up being found in the same bed together the next morning. And then you argued that, oh, they were just wrestling and that this convicted offender had a right to wrestle in bed with an 11-year-old boy. It's all on tape, Kent. You can't get out of it. So you're just a hypocrite because, first of all, you're not telling the truth about Atchison's involvement. Secondly, even if he was involved to the extent, it had nothing to do with your conviction. And thirdly, you seem to have a predilection for friends that do that sort of thing themselves, and you make excuses for them, Kent. It's all on tape.
I did not break, and he knows that now. Town is shaken after prosecutors arrest in a sex sting, New York Times. Children practice football this week at Shoreline Park in Gulf Breeze, Florida, where John David Roy Atchison coached girls softball. Atchison brought a Dora the Explorer doll, hoop earrings, and petroleum jelly with him from Florida. Let's see. According to court records, he initiated an online chat August 29th with an undercover officer posing as a mother interested in letting men have sex with her daughter. In several conversations, he said he wanted to have oral, vaginal, and anal sex with the woman's fictitious daughter. I'm always gentle and loving, not to worry, no damage ever, no rough stuff ever, he said at one point. I've done it plenty. Atheist. That's the guy that came after me.
Now, once again, he says atheist. That's a guy come after me. I've told you what Kent defended, and it's all on record. And I've also told you that as disgusting as this prosecutor was, he only had a minor role in Kent's case after he'd been convicted in filing one or two papers, and that even if he had had a more major role, that had nothing to do with Kent's conviction. It's a straw man argument. It's trying to detract from the things that Kent did, and that is a classic tactic of his.
So, Matthew, thanks for the video. I listened to your seminar, was taken aback by your wit and love for the Lord. Trouble to find the government imprisoned you for not paying taxes and strange accusations from women in your life. I'll be glad to answer that. Glad to answer that one also in Q&A time if you want to bring that one up. Let's see.
I know you won't. Well, I'm banned from asking questions. I tried to, but my comments don't show up. And I'm not being unreasonable here. I'm just putting the truth. I've actually challenged Kent to a debate on his tax crimes and structuring, and he's refused. I wonder why.
So, Matthew, to answer your question, I'm not a tax protester. I've been a pretty bold preacher of the gospel for 50 years now in my DVD number 5. My seminar series, DVD number 5 in the Creation Seminar Series, is the one they wanted to shut me up about. I was exposing the evil in some of the government offices, the things they were doing. When they came with the SWAT team, they said, get every DVD number 5 you can find.
That's just a load of unsubstantiated drivel, Kent. You know it.
They didn't get the master. We're still producing it, okay? So I'm outspoken, aren't I? If I believe something, I preach it, all right? I was exposing some corrupt activity, and that's the DVD the SWAT team was instructed to seize. I did not break any tax or structuring law. The pedophile U.S. attorney spent 5 years trying to find something to imprison me. Agent who works for the...
That's just not right, once again. But come on, Kent, you produce the evidence of that. If that guy, Atchison, spent 5 years trying to get you, because he didn't. You know it.
Private company, the IRS, most people don't know the IRS is not part of the government. It's a private corporation, okay? They opened the ministry safe, found $42,000 of ministry money, and made a tax bill for the exact amount and seized it. Pinchas Scott. I had a judge that hates Christians who dismissed 2 juries that would not convict.
The judge does not hate Christians, and have explained about that person who did come before her on the charge of breaching a settled lawsuit. So deserved to come before her for that. Your own guys, Byram, etc., the one who has seems to play around with his own family members. Another thing that you're not going to mention today, Kent. He's the one that's producing this sort of rubbish. It's just nonsense. No proof, nothing.
And convened a third jury who finally did. I was given a ridiculous sentence for no crime at all, and I served it all.
So just to ask about this, if the two juries were really dismissed and had to convene new ones, you'd have had 3 separate trials. Did you have 3 separate trials? I don't think so.
I've maintained my innocence for 17 years now, and I will continue till I die. And God will expose all the corruption in my case. Lots of the Bible was written from prison by innocent men convicted by corrupt politicians. I wrote 37 books while I was in prison, earned 2 doctor's degrees, led 800 men to
I mean, you bought 2 more degrees from your bogus university, your diploma mill. I think you got 3 PhDs and an honorary one. I call it buy 3, get 1 free.
the Lord, held 4 Bible studies a day in my room, answered 8,000 letters. I kept busy. I wrote this book. Why on earth did God let this happen?
God let it happen because you did the crime. He probably is not particularly interested, if he does exist, in getting a crook like you out.
A whole series, 7 books. I've only got, 2? 1 in print, and the rest are ebook. Somebody talk to me. Hello?
I don't know. Yeah, 2 in print and the rest are on
2 in print and the rest up in on the internet. Okay? History is full of stories like mine where innocent people suffer, usually over greed in those who are in positions of power. If some people, including a few in my small town, are dumb enough to believe rumors and judge me and convict me without coming to me to at least hear my side, that's their problem. As far as I know, my heart's right with God. I'm busy trying to please him and spread his word worldwide. You're welcome to come join me or get out of the way, because I'm going to keep going, right? When the Jews saw the multitudes, they were filled with envy and spake against those things.
Oh, this is typical of Kent. He always tries to find up some Bible sort of verses, then he claims to be the victim. It's just what he does. Look, Kent is completely guilty of the crime of structuring. I've explained what it is and how it involves these multiple withdrawals in cash. He knew about it. The witness stated that. And he did not withholding tax from his employees. And he was arrogant and horrible, just like he is in real life. And that's probably earned him the biggest sentence. So there you go, the truth about Hovind's tax crimes.